Hey friends, Chapter 10, Section 2, the beginning of Islam. There is a lot to cover in this video, so let's go through it because I will try to do it in 10 minutes because your time is always valuable. We studied the role that Christianity played in the Roman Empire, so now we are going to study the role that Islam played in the Arabian Peninsula on the fringes of the Byzantine Empire and how this religion impacted history. The same thing here, religion can be studied objectively to understand their impact on history. So it's not as if we're saying this is Islam, you should be a Muslim. It's saying here we're going to look at this religion and see the role that it played in history. And one quick theme I do want to acknowledge, um, I think it's important to acknowledge the gaps in knowledge. And by gaps in knowledge, I'm actually referring to my knowledge. Since history is this giant, huge story, I think there are some chapters that, from an educator's perspective, I know more about than others. For example, I think I know a little bit more about the Romans, and I think I even know more about the Chinese because I've actually had a chance to visit Italy and the Colosseum, and I lived in China for a year, so that greatly enhanced my understanding of Chinese history. Islamic civilization, I made this box a little bit smaller because my knowledge of this topic and this subject isn't as great as for these other two topics. So I'm going to say that right off the bat. I have not been to the Middle East. I haven't studied it extensively, but I do have the sources. I've read the material, and I'm going to do my best to explain kind of the role that Islam played in world history. So any incorrections or faults in the video, that's not my intent. But again, I'm just going to acknowledge that other subjects I know a little bit more about. But Islam, what was it like? The religion will have its origins in here. The Arabian Peninsula, the green actually shows how far it had spread both west and east, and we'll talk about that in the next video. But if we look at a geography of the Arabian Peninsula, we can see that it's going to play a different role here. Um, the people that live in the Arabian Peninsula are going to live differently from the Greeks in the Aegean Sea or the Romans in the Italian Peninsula. The desert is going to have an impact in the way that people live. There were groups of people in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century in the Arabian Peninsula known as Bedouins who would migrate from oasis to oasis wherever there was water. They would travel to. So they did not have settled farming like the Romans and the Etruscans did. They had in some sections, but just again, the geography is having a huge impact because you literally can't farm here. You could up here, but you can't here. So that changes the way people live. Traveling groups of nomads then came to be known as caravans. These would be groups that would migrate across the Arabian Peninsula. But trading is going to be most prevalent in Mecca here, a city along the Arabian Peninsula next to the Red Sea, where all kinds of goods were traded. These were the more commercial centers of the Arabian Peninsula. And we start our story with Mohammed, who was born in the year 570. And I put a picture of a camera with no pictures because actually in Islam, you will not see depictions of the prophet. So there's no there shouldn't be a painting of Muhammad because the idea that his message and his words are going to be so influential that it can't be replicated because nothing would give satisfaction to the role that Muhammad, the prophet, will play in Islam. And this is still something today. Several years ago in France, there was a group of people who got really upset when the prophet was depicted. So, out of respect, there shouldn't be depictions of the prophet Muhammad. A little bit about what happened. When Muhammad was 40 years old in 610, he says that an angel named Gabriel had delivered a message to him while he was out praying one day. And then, according to Islam and according to the message delivered by Gabriel, I've also seen a couple different spellings of Gabriel. I'm using this one. But according to Islam, people had abandoned the true faith, and that the people were to accept and submit a new God. Many of the people in this part of the world were polytheistic. There were Christians living on the fringes of the Byzantine Empire and Jews, but this was going to be a new religion. Followers of Muhammad then became known as Muslims, and Muslim actually literally means someone who submits to the teachings of Islam. People at first did not accept his message, but unlike Christianity, within Muhammad's lifetime, Islam will become the accepted religion. So as it continues to grow, by 622, this is going to be an important year, Muhammad and his followers had been invited to Yathrib, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is a city north of Mecca. And in Yathrib, the people accept Muhammad's teaching, and then Yathrib changed its name to Medina, or the city of the Prophet. This becomes known as the Hijra, or the migration. And the year 622 in the Gregorian calendar is considered by many Muslims to be year one. So 622 years after Christ, the year one is when Islam officially is accepted. And then by 630, Muhammad is welcomed into Mecca, the largest city in the Arabian Peninsula, as the prophet. So a little bit about what Muslims believe and what Muhammad taught. I put a picture of a mosque in Toledo, Ohio. This is the closest one, I believe, to where I live and teach. But Mezouins will call someone to prayer, and when they go into the mosque, there is the Shahada, which is cited by Muslims. He says, "There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger." So this will become part of what is known as the five pillars of Islam, the declaration that there's only one God. So Islam is a monotheistic religion. In Arabic, Allah is the word for God. Muslims are asked to pray 5 times a day facing Mecca, the holy city. So Mecca is about right here. So if you are in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, which is, I think, the biggest city in the United States for practicing Muslims, you should face then east when making your prayers. But if you are in Indonesia, which has the greatest number of Muslims in the world, you would be facing then west. Mosques are houses of worship for the Muslims, and the words of Muhammad were recorded in the holy book known as the Quran. I've seen a couple different spellings of it. I'm not sure which one is most accurate, but here's the Quran. It contains the words of Muhammad that were delivered to him. I read too that the Quran is supposed to, out of respect, be placed like at the top of your bookshelf. So this is actually my bookshelf. It's always meant to be closed when you're not reading it. So I'm not a Muslim, but I just do it out of respect. So, and women were actually afforded more rights, according to the words of Muhammad, at the time then too. And it put kind of a comparison, contrast between Islam and Christianity, just because most people where I live are Christians, and kind of looking at religion comparatively can help them understand. Islam is again proclaiming that there's only one God. Christianity is doing the same. For Islam, Muhammad is the prophet, and in Christianity, Jesus. The five pillars of Islam is kind of similar to the Ten Commandments, and Islam also encourages almsgiving, which is also included in Christian tradition. This is zakah, or almsgiving. And I want to make sure I get this next point right. But what is, I think it gets kind of lost, is Muslims recognize like the teachings of Abraham. Muslims also recognize that Jesus was a person who was acting in the faith, but Muslims ultimately recognize and accept Muhammad as the final prophet. So Muslims acknowledge the existence of Abraham for the Jews and Jesus for the Christians, but they say that Muhammad is the last in the line of prophets. We saw then earlier too with the schism of 1054, one of the themes in history is that there's often sects or denominations among different religions, or splits. And this is also going to happen in the Muslim world when Muhammad dies in 632. Questions then arose as to who should be the next caliph. Caliph is a term for spiritual successor, like the person who leads everybody else. And two groups of people are going to emerge: the Sunnis, who I believe this translates to the party of consensus. They believe that the person with the greatest knowledge of Islam should become then the next caliph. They were opposed by the Shiites, the party of Ali, and the Shiites believe that the next caliph should be someone who is actually directly related to Muhammad. And here's again the story where sometimes I get a little bit of it lost, but I know the first three caliphs were Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. Uthman was assassinated because there was tension between these two groups, the Sunnis and the Shiites. And then there was Ali, who was a Shiite caliph then also. So the world would then be impacted by Sunni Islam and Shiite Islam. About 85% of Muslims today are Sunnis. One of the exceptions is Muslims that live in Iran. I believe most Iranian Muslims are Shiites. And I think then to conclude, I included everything was like green in this PowerPoint because the colors on a flag can often tell you about the country. I know I'm going over 10 minutes right now, but really fast. Green is important as a color for Muslims. I'm not exactly sure why, but green will show up on a lot of Muslim majority countries, such as the flag of Algeria. Here is the flag of Azerbaijan, and also to the flag of Saudi Arabia actually has, I think this is the Shahada in Arabic, meaning there is no one God but God. So that is the section on Islam.